listening to Pause. We pause for a second or two. This is episode 92, Confused Goal Structure. When we talk about our confused situation, being confused, what we mean is that we feel at a loss. When we are confused, things seem to move in a different rhythm than us. When we are confused, what we see and what we are told does not add up. When we are confused, it gets difficult to make plans. In other episodes, we have began talking about the 3 specific skills for our confused situation. They are specific skill internet, specific skill letters, and specific skill routines. And these 3 skills together create structure. And not only do they create structure for us, they create a structure for our confusion. Confusion in itself will always be there. As a person, we are confused, and we always will be. Confusion in itself is never the enemy, but the lack of structure for our confusion is what creates problems for us. Confusion is sort of the soil from which things grow and change. Without confusion, we can never grow. But what we want is not to be rid of our confusion, but to build a structure for it, so that we may grow in an interesting way. The 3 different specific skills for our confused situation, deals with some different aspects of building a structure for our confusion. Specific skill internet basically deals with everything standing in between us as people. It's not just internet, it's internet in a wide meaning. So if I call you up using an app on my phone, then the technology between us becomes internet. So it's almost internet in a symbolical meaning. So specific skill internet deals with all the technology and all the intermediaries between you and I, and how they confuse us. These different means confuse us as we try to make plans and try to understand one another. Specific skill letters deals with who is actually saying something, who is actually wishing for something, wanting something, and what that something is. The who and the what. Often we are very confused about who is saying something and what that is. I often mistake my sentiment to be yours and vice versa. We do this for a number of reasons, and specific skill letters is one way in which we can create a structure for this kind of confusion. Specific skill routines addresses that we as people are complex. Everything that is complex needs routines, and everything living is complex. So we need routines in order to thrive as complex people. So whenever we are dealing with anything complex, with something complex, then we need time and rhythm in order to grasp it on an instinctual level, on an intuitive level. So by having routines, we may keep being complex. We do not have to oversimplify ourselves when we have sound routines in our lives. We live in times right now when it is easy to see that people are confused. There are many popular ways of expressing this. Maybe the most popular one being talking about misinformation, disinformation, everything fake or constructed or insidious. So we live in times when it is very challenging dealing with confusion. We feel very confused. And that is natural because a lot is changing right now. And change comes out of confusion. Confusion is the creative soil from which everything grows. So naturally, now much is changing, so we need to be confused. Otherwise, we cannot change. And often we get stuck in blaming the confusion in itself. But the problem is not misinformation in itself. The problem is not having a structure for it. When people have structure for their confusion, when they have sound routines, when they clarify what is them and what is others, and when they are clear about the different means and intermediaries between us. When people are clear about these things, then misinformation and disinformation, as it's being called, lose some, if not much, of its grip over people. Change necessitates confusion. So the confusion, the misinformation, will always be all around in times of great change. So vilifying confusion in itself is not really productive. What we need to be clear about is a problem, is when we lack structure, when we do not feel confident enough to actually be confused. We need to be confused. It's good to be confused, but we need to be confused within a framework, within a rhythm. We are complex, and just as plants in nature grows in this rhythmic manner, with the days and nights, with the sunlight coming and going, you can see these videos of plants sort of breathing in and out and growing in these sort of rhythmic thrusts ever outward. And we are the same. So when we have this sort of structure, this sort of rhythm, then we can thrive while being confused. Then it's not a problem anymore. Having such a structure for our confusion does not necessarily diminish the vastness of our confusion, nor does it diminish how scary it is. Confusion is scary. It is unknown. It is untested. It is not initiated by us. So it is scary. It is vast. And we are supposed to move through that. And we just need a structure to be able to stay on course, stay on our individual course throughout these times of confusion. So it's not so much about determining what is always right or wrong, because we will have mishaps. We will make wrong calls. It's more about having a structure that allows us to come back again and again. It's more about being in this rhythm of growing more than necessarily choosing the right option at every point. We will not. We will choose wrong some of the times. So, if you think back for a moment at maybe a time when you felt confused in your life, let's do that for a moment. Chances are high that the time you are thinking about for yourself was a time of great change. Some things in your life were changing greatly. Chances are also high that you did not feel really structured at this time. Maybe your routines were lacking, or you were unsatisfied with your routines. Maybe you had difficulty determining what was your intention and what was the intention of others. Maybe you were being sensitive to the wish of someone else, or loyal to someone else and wanting to save their face instead of yours. Maybe you were caught up in a high-paced everyday life and using a lot of technology quite recklessly or without thought. Maybe using some new technology. Maybe using a new means of communication. So basically, it comes down to stop vilifying our confusion and develop some sort of relationship to it instead. Not necessarily becoming friends with our confusion. That sounds a bit too much. But definitely developing some sort of relationship with it. Some sort of giving and taking. And step by step learning about and being curious about what our confusion is actually for, what function it may have in our lives, what role it plays. Because it does play a role. It does have value. I would argue great value. And the better structure we have for our confusion, the more confusion we can take on and the more we can grow. Or the more satisfactory we can grow. The more to our satisfaction. grow in an interesting way, a way that is interesting to us, not someone else, but to us. So, gaining or building a structure for our confusion is, in a sense, to develop an ambition to feel interesting, to be interested in ourselves. If we push away and denounce our confusion, we will not feel interesting to ourselves. It is out of our confusion that we become interesting in our own eyes. So we need confusion in order to not be bored by ourselves. That's it for today. Thank you.